Awesome. All right. So talking about some definitions here, personal identifying information, PII, is any information at all that can identify someone that's specific. The PHI is information that's health related that is kind of a subset of that. The confidentiality, the duty for anyone entrusted with personal information to keep that information private. That would be us as coaches. The privacy is the right, and this may be new to some, or new to some, and others is a refresher. So just go along with me with this. The privacy is the right of an individual to have control over his or her personal information and how it's disclosed, as well as security and what kind of methods are you going to secure the client files. The ethical and legal concerns around confidentiality and privacy and security center on PII. More specifically, ethical guidelines and federal state laws apply to sensitive personal information. When disclosed, the information can result in harm to that individual. Sensitive personal information includes any personal identifiers, like I said, full name, social security, birth date, email, phone number, account numbers, financial data, medical health data, firstborn, blood type, whatever. Um, we'll dive into HIPAA just a little bit later, but it's also important to note that the individual right is not absolute. There are some situations, Carrie kind of talked to it a little earlier, as to what can be shared. Personal information can be shared, and some of those could be, for treatments, for payments, health organization, or operations for certain public health activities. We're going to start off with confidentiality, which is essential. You've got to have that as one of the building blocks, building and maintaining that trust and rapport for your client. If you don't, if they know that they can't trust you with confidentiality, you're not going anywhere. You've lost them. Their clients, they must feel safe and secure that the information that revealed as part of the coaching relationship will remain safe and secure. Maintaining that confidentiality means that you will not share client information and you will take steps to keep that private. All of PII or private client information includes the personal information, anything that happened within the coaching sessions, and the client name and existence of the relationship with the coach. Here you go, Carrie. This one's just for you. There are a few conditions in which confidentiality may be breached without the client's consent. If we think that the client is hurting child abuse or an elder abuse, we got to report it. If they're an imminent threat to themselves or even somebody else, let them know that. Let somebody know. And then any illegal activity, or maybe even subpoenaed by a court. They want you to come in and bring all your records that you've had with that client, and from that, yeah, for the court. But just know that. Uh-oh. See, Charlie, you called it earlier. I, I rolled the wheel and it just took off. Sorry. He called it. He says, we're going to have technical issues. There we go. Um, Coaches have an obligation to disclose information to the appropriate authority or third party if it can be reasonably foreseen that harm may come to somebody. Ideally, clients should make the disclosure themselves and we just support them along with that. But in the beginning of, this could be part of your agreement in the beginning is like, hey, your stuff's private and confidential with me, with a few exceptions, and let them know, hey, if you're suicidal, if you're going to hurt somebody, if there's suspected child abuse of any type, I have to report it. Always include a confidentiality statement in your client agreement, but avoid promising total or complete confidentiality because, as we all know, it can't be guaranteed. Things happen. Hey, there's a million emails out there. The company had a breach, and it'll happen. So you can't promise that it'll happen, but you do all that you can to be able to keep it under wrap best you can. You want to be able to confirm the communication preferences with the client, whether it's going to be text or phone or email. Um, and I will even go as far as to say, maybe even setting that boundary of, after 9 p.m. at night, my office door is closed. I'm not texting, I'm not responding to anything, because some people will take advantage of that and be like 10:30 at night, and I've got to ask a coach a question. So maybe have that in their coaching agreement as well, as setting those parameters, the expectations for both you and them. While it is not required by law unless subject to HIPAA, it is the best practice to obtain written consent from a client to disclose personal information, particularly if it's highly sensitive. Like Charlie was saying earlier, you want to be on the right side of this and not the wrong side of this, and you've got that paper as a backup for you. That way, if it ever comes into question, I got it right here. They signed it. I'm covered. Proof of consent. You want to avoid access to records and exposure to records of clients and patients that are not yours. You don't want to be digging around. And even if they are yours, and you're getting into the system, knowing about certain other medical conditions that doesn't apply to coaching, you don't need access to that. You just need access to what is specifically under your scope. Um, For example, on PHI or intake forms, not including any type of medications or biometric information or their medical conditions. They're there for coaching to get better and whatever they want, and not necessarily laying out everything that they're going through right now. Because they may not, again, that goes back to that building that trust, and they may open up down the road, but right now, you want baby steps in the trust and rapport. You want to be sure that wherever you're coaching, whether you're electronically or face to face or wherever, that it's a secure place. If they're doing it virtually like this, nobody on my end can hear, nobody on their end can hear. For example, today I had a coaching session and the lady went and sat in her car because she didn't want anybody to hear what she had to say in the house. She's like, this is my information. And so she went out and sat in the driveway in the car, and we had a 75-minute initial coaching session. And that's with redirecting and interrupting and redirecting several times. Whew. In a group situation, though, you want to, make sure that, hey, whatever's said here in the group stays here in the group and everybody agrees to that. Again, trying to maintain confidentiality within the group. You want to have a clear agreement about how coaching information will be exchanged among coach, client, and sponsor. Sponsors of the third party, like they were talking about earlier, I think it was Patrick or Carrie, somebody talked about third party coming in and what can I share with them, what I can't share with them. If employer wants the information regarding the coaching session, suggest that the client provide that information. Otherwise, have the client review and authorize anything that you plan to share with the employer. They have the right to say yay or nay on what can be shared, because it's their information. And if I've got you on the screen over here, so if you have something and you want to jump in here, just turn on your microphone and say something. That way I'm not going back and forth looking for hands. I see stuff moving around. I'm just kind of ignoring it. For example, the employer might ask how the coaching session is going, and employees, are they making progress? Are they engaged? What if you can share suggestions for corporate wellness programs based on what is shared in your coaching sessions? Assure clients that they have the power again, they're fully in control on what will be shared. Any questions so far?
Chad, I have I'm trying to establish a new wellness coaching business in Oxford, Mississippi that would have multiple wellness coaches. And I have this intent of potentially using a screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment kind of tracker to help coaches just kind of maintain their caseload And then anytime they refer to another provider, just have that means of tracking. If I was say I'm supervising this coach using this tracker, is it ethical for me to have access to that log?
What do you think?
I think as long as the coach codes the patient names to protect PII, I think it would be okay for me as the supervisor to help train and coach the coach using that particular tool.
So are you using the private information to help coach or mentor the coach even more?
Yeah, I could forecast myself doing that.
Yeah, I think if you're not directly in the line with that client, then it's not yours to dig into. Now, Charlie, you jump in here, but I think that's
I think
correct.
he's right. I think if you're doing a quality improvement check right on their work and you're using that as a quality tool, then absolutely you need to know what they're doing with the client. And that previews you, or whatever that word is, that allows you to be a part of that record. So you can go through it, you can do checks, you can literally ask questions. If there is questions about the quality of it, you even have the right to call the patient to verify information. So I would say absolutely you could do that. And you could do a whole lot more. I would say coding it would be an overkill unless you were trading it over unsecured ways. But if it's secured, you could, I wouldn't advise it. I'd keep it in a record, a shared file, that's secure. But I wouldn't advise sharing it over email just because there's too many. Once you start doing that, that gets tricky. Um, so that would be my advice. I would say you're at 100% as the supervisor of that person eligible to go into that chart and look at it. But if you were then to use that information just like anybody else against, for whatever reason, the information on the client against the client, any shape or way or form, then yeah, that would be a violation. Or if you had a dual, relationship with that patient,
Oh yeah.
and you were reviewing that chart, you would have to, what's it called? Excuse yourself from that, and let somebody else do it. But I would argue that you need a peer review process, not necessarily.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah, if we're doing peer review, it didn't even hit me, but doing a peer review, something like that to be sure that the coach is on task. Yes, I can see that.
So I would say yes, you could do that, and it would be perfectly okay.
Good deal. Thank you. That just answered a lot of questions for me. Thank you.
So for the working with the sponsors of third party people, you want to be having the agreement of what's going to be shared, what will not be shared with whom, how and when. Is it going to be after every session, after 6 months, and what is it that you're going to be sharing? Another case study here. Carrie has met with 51 employees from their first coaching session. Company X has asked Carrie to provide suggestions for lunch and learns based on employee health goals identified in their sessions. True or false? This is sensitive personal information and should not be shared. True, Carrie should be obtain consent from her clients in order to share this information. Or false, it is ethically permissible to share this information as long as Carrie doesn't share specific employee names. What y'all think?
I guess my assumption is that it would be like when Haley was talking about being very broad in your, like if you were going to take a topic, it would be a more of a broad topic, not a very specific scenario with a client.
Yes, you're correct. As long as you're not identifying anybody, or I'm going to pick out, you know, these people that are, 5 feet tall and start sharing that information or whatever, then yes, as long as it's not any way to identify, you're spot on. So false is correct.
Hey, Chad,
Yes, ma'am.
can I jump in and say one thing real quick?
Please.
I'm still on Patrick's question because it made me think of a lot of things. But one thing I did think about as y'all were talking about that, it may be smart when we were talking about that initial paperwork, it may be smart for your organization to just have something in writing that says our coaches have, monthly peer reviews, whatever, however you want to word it, so that the client has that information ahead of time. That may help cover you as well.
That's a very good point.
I'll also add on here, back to this particular case study. How would you feel if all of a sudden a lunch and learn came up based on a topic that you specifically talked to your health coach about, and then all of a sudden a lunch and learn popped up about it, and you never heard anything from your health coach? Would you feel like your health coach would be sharing information with your employer against your will? Would you feel a certain kind of way, or would you think it was coincidental? I will say, in my opinion, in a situation like this, I would let all my clients know. Anyway, that's just how I would feel about it, because I feel like that could be a violation of your trust with those particular clients. So I would try to negotiate in a way to where you could tell all your clients before these lunch and learns went on. Anyway, I just wanted to add that in there.
Spot on. You don't want to burn any bridges, create that draft or a statement saying that, hey, this is what information I'm going to be sharing with the employer, so they can have an idea as a broad, like you said, the broad category, and have them initial it so that you have that backup again. Being fully transparent as best you can, as much as you can, is the best way to go with this. You don't want to get burned or burn anybody else. All right, so I've got a couple of screenshots here of what I use. I use the Practice Better platform for my coaching. And so I went through and I removed the PII. I left Michael in there, and I was like, nah, I even left his picture in there, whatever. But I took out his last name just to help protect him. But I use Practice Better. Charlie was saying earlier that, get something that's going to be doing the billing as well. For me, this does. And I'm not saying, hey, this is the end all be all, or you all should use this. I'm not advertising for them at all. It's just what I use. Okay. And so I'm going to briefly go through a SMART goal, or my second session notes, just to kind of show you the style and the template that I use for note taking with the client. I will say that this guy was a unicorn. He showed up, and during our first session, he was already trying to set SMART goals in session one. He was ready to make changes. So, I mean, it was easy. He just needed a little bit of support and accountability to get him pointed in the right direction. So these are just screenshots, top to bottom here. And it just talks about, it shows me, it was a 30-minute session. And it was for the SMART goals, focusing on moving the body and food and drink. Again, this is another thing that covers me. It was conducted by phone. They verbally consented. They agree to use their technology, and of course, if they're using Wi-Fi, they're paying for it, not me. So here's kind of the SMART goals that we started. So we reviewed from session one, which was, like I said, he was on fire. I'm going to the gym 3 days a week. Going to the gym has allowed me to focus, feel better, and have more energy. I need to stretch more, and I'm not as limber as I used to be. So he realizes what he's doing, but he knows that he needs to do more. He's been mindful about his eating, his portion control, listening to his body of when to stop eating, and drinking more water instead of sodas. So again, I identify which areas moving forward, this is what he did, but moving forward, we're going to focus again on moving the body and food and drink. So the action step down here, moving the body, the SMART goal is going to the gym 3 days a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 1 to 2 hours, spending 20 minutes on cardio and another hour plus doing some type of stretching and training, strength training. For the food and drink category, continuing to be mindful of what and how much he's eating and listening to his body when to stop, wanting to find other ways for healthier foods. And so I use EPE here, and I'm like, hey, I've got a resource that may be, well, let me back up. I told Mike, I said, hey, would it be okay? I've got a resource that may be good to you or good for you. Would you be interested in hearing about it? Yes, I would. So I told him about nutritionfacts.org. And I told him, I said, it's got a bunch of different videos for a bunch of different type of diseases and situations that they're going through. So I gave that to him, and I was like, what do you think about that? And he's like, absolutely, I'm going to dig in and look it up. And so he started using that to help kind of fine tune what he was going to eat. I never told him what to eat. I just gave him a resource to go check it out, and that was on him to do that. So yeah, his videos on healthy eating and weight loss and what healthy food to consume. The long-term goal, he really did not really get into setting a SMART goal for long-term. He knew where he wanted to be. He was at 175 pounds, and he wanted to do 8 more pounds is what he wanted to lose. Want to be healthy and look good. But when the client says, I can't say if it's going to be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, I don't press him. He knows what he wants. He's making progress. You read the room and you go with it. Some of the successes, hey, he's going to the gym 3 days a week. Some of his barriers, he realizes that building muscle in place of weight loss, and he's okay with that. So he's not losing weight as fast as he would like because he's building muscle along the way. If I do miss a day throughout the week, I use a Saturday and Sunday as kind of my makeup day. That way I'm still accomplishing my goal of 3 days a week. And then support and accountability as a son and his wife, either going with him to the gym, or, hey, it's Wednesday, you going to the gym today? And just having that, somebody to speak into his life going, hey, let's stay focused on your goal that you've set. And then finally down here at the bottom, I put what session we're on, depending on if we're going to do 8 sessions, I'll put 2 of 8 or whatever. But here this was session number 2. And so that's just kind of a quick snapshot of what a SMART goal session would look like in a 30-minute time frame. Any questions about what you've seen?
Are you writing those notes once the session has concluded?
Yes. So when I have my notepad here that I take notes on, and I'm just writing, when I'm doing my notes, I'm just doing bullet points or keywords. And so like for when I'm asking questions, I was like, if I'm in the first session, I'll put PS, personal strengths, and I'll write out whatever the strengths are, and barriers, B, circle it. It's short. I'm using shorthand to kind of track along. And so when I go back to do my notes, now I'll tell you, I cheat a little, and I take the template that I have and I put it in Microsoft Word, and then I dictate my notes on here, edit it necessary, copy and paste into the platform and save it. So rarely do I type anything out.
Just want to throw in a little piece of information that helped me along the way with this stuff. If you choose to write notes, if you choose to kind of look away from the screen to do things like this, make sure at the beginning of your coaching session that you mention, hey, I'm going to be looking away. I'm not disengaging. I'm just writing down some notes so that I can refer back to it later in our conversations, so that they know for a fact that you're not distracted, you're not texting on your phone, things like that, because this virtual world can be a little confusing with that kind of stuff.
And
Oh,
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. No, I was just really gonna ask, because I was gonna try to kind of change gears and just ask how many people have thought about an electronical health record, the notes that they're going to be keeping, kind of have y'all been kind of thinking in that light of how y'all are going to start documenting whenever y'all think of this in the future?
I've been thinking about if the business I'm trying to start, if we opt to use an EHR and keep notes, having some templates like what Chad has. I love what Chad has. Thinking about using that for different kinds of tools, like a SMART goal template or a contingency management template, or I don't know, some other modality.
Yeah, I think, I think it's an interesting thing is because do you necessarily need an electronical health record? Not really. You don't necessarily need one. Um, However, how else are you going to track your client's progress? How else are you going to, you're going to be taking some kind of notes regardless. You might as well have a system that can track that. You can also probably pull data from it to say, hey, my overall coaching skills is this, right? Like here goes my clients, and most of my clients, have accomplished these amount of goals, right? These are the ones that have come to fruition. And there's other ways that you can track different data in electronical health records, because even with your note templates, and I'm not as familiar with this one, but I know with like Practice Fusion and some other ones, you can actually pull data that you already have in the electronical health record into other notes too. So as you automatically pull the note up, you can drop a note template in there, and then it'll automatically pull that information into that note, meaning like demographic information, meaning other goals you may have set in the thing. You can set it up in different ways to where that information will automatically pull over. So if you have nurse practitioners, that's a good example. If you have them and they have labs, they're not going to go try to pull labs every time to add to their note, because it's required for a lot of insurance to have labs already in the note, right? And previous information that they have has to be in the note. You're not going to go search that every single time to go put it into a note. So there's capabilities to pull all information into your note template without even having to do much. So really documentation isn't as hard if you know your electronical health record well enough to do things. You just heard a hack by Chad of doing it in Microsoft Word. So you can do the speech to talk, and it talks all the way through it, right? And then now you got it all in there, and you're just editing the little things of, I got a country voice, so sometimes the speech to text kind of mess up a lot of my words through there. So I have to go in and edit it a lot whenever I do those. It's just easier for me to type. So that's something else to keep in mind, is how well you talk for those types of things. But anyway, I think if you know your electronical health record well enough, like get to know it, watch the videos on it. If you found the one that you're going to use, you should know it pretty much inside and out. So that way you can have all those little things to where it'll expedite your process. And the other thing I was going to say is the reason why we are doing 20-minute coaching sessions is because, have y'all ever heard of the billable hour? It's a big rule. Typically, um, like in psychotherapy, people bill for 60 minutes, but you only get seen for 50 minutes. And the reason why is because there's 10 minutes of documentation built in. So we're teaching you 20-minute coaching skills, because really that should be a 30-minute session, and you got 10 minutes of documentation time. So another thing about that, like you should always build in your documentation time immediately after your sessions. So that way it's done, it's fresh, it's everything. If you wait, And I've worked in documentation fields and everything for a very long time. If you wait till the very last minute to put in your notes, they're going to be shit notes, and you don't want to do shit notes. You want good notes, and good notes are kind of done right after. But typically, if you're building out your schedule, remember to build in documentation time for your people. So teach them to do coaching in 20 minutes if you want them to do 30-minute sessions. Teach them to do coaching in 45 if you want them to do an hour-minute session, and get them the time to be able to do that, because insurance companies allow you to do that. That's the reason why they bill it that way. So take advantage of it, and teach your people to have the boundaries to stop when they need to so they can get their documentation done. Anyway, and yourself. Sorry, I keep talking like I'm talking about we're supervising people. Anyway, but I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry.
All I could hear was choir singing in the background. Hallelujah. Yes, that is spot on. I try not to ever go 2 sessions back to back with coaching without doing my notes. That way, when I finish one, completely documented, everything's done, I can move on to the next one. I think this is coming up, but I'm gonna say it anyway, just because it's on the tip of my tongue, thinking about it. Be careful what you put in the documentation, because it could be subpoenaed into the courts. I've had some weird people tell me some things, and I choose to leave the weird stuff out. It's nothing threatening or anything like that, but just be mindful about what information you are recording in here, because the client could see it, and or the court could see it. And then, and again, I'm not selling Practice Better, but if you wanted to play around with this platform, you can do like the first 10 clients for free. It's limited on the capabilities of what they allow you to do, but at least it gives you the opportunity to get in there and kind of dig around and see what does it feel like to do notes in an electronic record. And as you go up in different tiers of whatever you're paying for, then more opportunity becomes available. And going back to earlier, we were talking about Zoom being HIPAA compliant. This platform also has a virtual setting that is HIPAA compliant that you can utilize with your clients. All right, off my soapbox. I'm not selling it. I'm just telling you my experience with them. Privacy and security. Best practices for record keeping, electronic files, electronic communication, and subcontractors. Let's see here. Coaches must take reasonable steps to protect client information. This is, hey, we've talked about this. This is, must be important because it keeps coming up again, right? Reasonable meaning a reasonable, prudent person in the same circumstance how they would behave as well. Privacy and security refers to personal information, and whether it's written or electronic, and how it's transmitted, whether you're carrying it or it's electronic. What y'all think about this right here? If your office looked like that, this is why I like an EHR. It keeps all this under control, but there are no specific guidelines for how to keep client files. Good rule of thumb is to keep them only as long as you think, but I think Charlie talked about, 5 to 7 years, depending on the state, on how long you need to keep the records. But whenever that threshold hits, you want to minimize your responsibility and your risk, and you want to go ahead and purge those files out, protecting yourself and the client. That way, again, if you get subpoenaed and it's been 5 years, I ain't got nothing, they're gone. You're clear, client's clear, everybody's happy. The longer you keep the client files, the longer you're responsible for them, the longer they're at risk of breach. So again, when you hit that threshold to be able to clean house, do so.
I have a question in regards to the record keeping.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're keeping it all electronically,
Mhm.
and say that you end up moving to a different database or for whatever reason, or you end up working for a different company and you're not using that database, do you still have to keep like a relationship with that database for the 5 to 7 years so that you have access to those records in case? Or is it just like you've terminated that side of the business, it doesn't matter, or you moved on from that platform, you can be done?
So you're moving from a private business to your private business into the corporate, and you're leaving your stuff behind and going into the corporate is what you're asking.
Yeah, or just you work with a platform and you decide this isn't working, it's not meeting my needs, I want to move to a different platform, and you decide to do something different. Like for some reason you're not using that same platform. Do you always have to have that platform for the 5 to 7 years so that you have those records?
Honestly, I don't know. That's a very good question.
I will add most electronic health records, they will convert it for you. Or like if like let's say you're moving from this one to a better one that's more, has more features and all that, and you're going to start paying for it because your practice is growing, and it just, like we talk about, if you can have one system that does everything, it'll do everything, and you want to move to it. Typically in that upfront payment, they will convert the files for you and merge all of it over. So then that way, all those back files will now be in this new electronic health record. The other thing is there's also ways that you can download. So like if you're closing it, so Chad's first scenario was like you quit your job. Like you're like, I'm going to go work 40 hours, for the VA, or I'm going to go do that. I'm shutting down my practice. There's ways to download those files out of there in a secure manner, and you are still responsible for securing that for the next 5 years. Yes. But you don't have to keep up with the electronic health record. There's, I don't know it. I'm not an IT person. You probably have to call, that electronic health record company saying, hey, I'm shutting down my practice, but I need to be able to pull these files for my security reasons, and it'll be locked on your computer for X amount of years.
I wouldn't want to be.
And I would say it also depends on state law. Some of that stuff, I'll talk to an attorney about it too, to say like in the state, if I shut down my practice, what do I do? How do I make sure I stay compliant? But ultimately, it will be your responsibility regardless for that X amount of time for the state law, no matter what. Whether you shut down that business, you do whatever, it is your responsibility. So, yeah. I guess that's bad news. I don't know, but hopefully it answered your question.
Actually, was not bad news, because I wouldn't want to be saddled with the monthly payment of keeping that platform going for 5 years when I'm not using it. So that's actually good news, is to be able to download it and secure it and just lock it up, put it away, and double lock box somewhere, and everybody's happy. And when that date comes, gone, flush it. Not literally. Again, you want to have, God forbid, if something would happen, you get injured or you die, what's going to happen to your records, be either electronically or paper. So have a plan in place for that. And again, I already talked about that. Be mindful of your notes as they may be seen by clients, or if they're subpoenaed. You want to be sure that they're password protected, obviously, but you want to protect your stuff. If you're saying that everything's confidential and you're keeping it protected, you need to follow through. Consider how you're going to maintain and store the electronic devices, or not devices, the files. Maybe a two-factor ID for particular sensitive data, and maybe even encrypting the data on portable storage devices. So if I do leave, I've got it, it's encrypted, locked away, we're good to go. It's safe. You're doing what you said you was going to do. As same thing with written files, consider how you're going to maintain and store those. In the event of a breach, most state laws require you to notify the person during a certain amount of time. Typically, the law applies in the state for which the client resides, but sometimes it's in the state in which you're doing business or where your business resides. So maybe even consider getting some type of cyber liability insurance. So if you do have a breach, you notify the insurance company, they take care of everything, they notify everything, and they handle They handle that in using a forensic lawyer. Just keep in mind that you want to password protect your accounts and know that the information that you're sending to the client may be minimal, if any, type of security at all. So you want to not put any type of HIPAA information in your email communication to the client. You know, maybe considered a third-party encrypted email service so that you can send stuff and they can open it up on their end. Some kind of HIPAA compliant software. Safely purge clients from all devices and platforms, and be mindful of using the public wireless connections. People use that stuff to steal all your data and have a breach. So be mindful about where you are trying to connect to. You want to be sure it's secure and safe. And just know that voicemails, phones, and text, they're not secure. They're listening to us right now. These are some of the best practices when using third-party services such as accountant and virtual or on-site assistant. You want to be sure that the subcontractors who have access to client information, that they sign a confidentiality agreement, offer training on privacy and security measures to everybody involved, provide access only to the information that is required to perform their job. And that's kind of where I was reading through this earlier, and I think that's where I was coming to you, Patrick, that initially, but now that we're talking about peer review, I understand. So you still want to limit what information that the coach, I mean, they don't need to get into everything. They just need to get into do their job, and that's it. Right. Case study. Courtney is coaching on site with Company X, Twitter. I'm sorry. And it's time for lunch. She places her client notes in a drawer in the office she is using and closes the door to go to lunch. On returning, she grabs her notes and heads to the conference room for a meeting. But during the meeting, Courtney exits the room to make a call, leaving her notes in a closed folder on the table. Later, Courtney leaves her client notes in the folder in her locked car while she picks up dinner on the way home. How many times did Courtney compromise her client information? 1, 2, 3, or 4 times? Patrick says 3. Everybody else just not engaged, don't care. 4 times? 3 times? So we got 3 and 4. What are you thinking, Jennifer?
I was thinking 3.
Thinking 3. Patrick, why do you say 3? What 3 are you talking about?
Placing her notes in the drawer in her office. It's not secure. Even like when she leaves the office, it's still not secure. The just closing the door does not constitute secured information. Leaving the notes on the table is the second time. And I would say locked car is also not secure because presumably it's in like a parking lot. And it can be broken into. That happened to many of my friends in Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs. Be on the lookout, on the guard. 2 times. I had to go back and reread this too. It's like, okay, where is it? So she left them unlocked and unattended in the office, and she also left them unattended during the meeting. It would be best practice to have her files in a locked box inside the car. So you were kind of dancing with the devil there, Patrick, with the locked car, but it would be even better if it was locked in the locked car. Maybe, maybe she could get a key to a drawer, key to the office to lock that up. She could take her notes with her when she goes in for dinner and make that call or to pick up for dinner. She's got her notes with her in her possession. She could keep the files in a locked storage box anytime they are left unattended. What if these weren't paper? What if it was her computer or laptop? The laptop would need to be password protected, right? Likewise, leaving her computer under lock and key if she was to get up and leave somewhere. So, what standard of care must coaches use to protect against highly unlikely compromises of confidences? Where's the Jeopardy theme song? Ding, 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 ding. Anybody going once? Oh,
Can you ask the question just once more?
absolutely. What standard of care must coaches use to protect against highly unlikely compromises of confidences? You hear this, you're going to go, oh, that makes sense. Reasonable measures. I know. I had to look at that too. I was like, that's some of the information that if I knew that, I flushed it. And so this was a good reminder for me as well. So y'all have read the HIPAA summary. Y'all understand and know what HIPAA is? No? Basically, HIPAA is solely meant to promote awareness of this complex topic of, protecting information. If you work for or do business with an entity that is covered by HIPAA or are otherwise required to comply with HIPAA in your practice, we recommend that you seek the guidance of a HIPAA specialist and continue to educate yourself about HIPAA compliance. Even if you aren't subject to HIPAA, it's advisable to be aware of the regulations and follow them as reasonably as you reasonably can. Yes, if you're not working with a third party or anybody that is HIPAA, and like for example, me, I'm a private coaching service. I don't work with anybody. I just coach not veterans, but clients on the side. I'm not really covered by HIPAA, but I certainly follow the same standards as if I were, because I don't need to get burned, my business get hurt, or my name dragged through the mud. So I'm going to do everything I can to, even though I may not be subject to HIPAA, I'm still going to follow the same rules. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, also known as HIPAA, required that the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, also known as HHS, to develop regulations for protecting the privacy and security of certain health information. In response, HHS created national standards for the protection of certain health information, what are commonly known as the HIPAA Privacy Rule and the HIPAA Security Rule. I'm going to dig in just a little here. Let's go with me. The goal of the HIPAA Privacy Rule is to protect the confidentiality of patients while enabling the flow of information required to provide health care. Whereas the HIPAA Privacy Rule, now why is that in there twice? I didn't catch that earlier. Security Rule deals with protected health information in general. The HIPAA Security Rule deals with electronic protected information, which is essentially a subset of HIPAA Privacy Rule, what it encompasses. If I just confused y'all, I'm right there with you, and I apologize. Basically, don't be sharing anybody's information that's not part of the process. If they don't need to know, they don't need to know, and that'll keep everybody out of the hot seat. High-Tech Act of 2009 was created to encourage entities who handle PHI to adopt and use electronic health records with the ultimate goal of improving the quality and safety and coordination of patient care. It has increased the security requirements for business associates and their subcontractors and increased penalties for violations. You don't want to mess up because you're going to pay dearly. The High-Tech Act required HIPAA-covered entities to enter into a business associate agreement with different with business associates as well as those subcontractors that are working with you. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody's accountable for the same information of not sharing. Unless you're directly working with one of these three entities, you likely won't be subject to HIPAA regulations. However, I would still practice it. That's just my own 2 cents. I've always, anyway, doesn't matter. Covered entities are individuals or companies that fall into 3 categories. They're either healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, chiropractors, nursing homes, health plans like insurance carriers, HMO, government-sponsored plans, and clearinghouses. Clearinghouses, there are organizations that process non-standard health information to conform to standards for data content or format, or vice versa. I'm trying not to make this dry and painful on y'all. I promise I'm trying. Almost finished. And by almost, just another 100 slides. Entities subject to HIPAA, a business associate for any individual company that performs certain functions or activities that involve the use of disclosure or protected health information on behalf of or providing services to a covered entity. Basically, you're a third party and you're helping out. You have to follow the HIPAA as well. I feel like I'm rehashing or beating a dead horse here. Sorry. Just like covered entities, business associates are required to have risk assessments, training, policies, and procedures. They want to be sure that everybody's on the same page and knows what they're doing, so the business don't get in trouble and they don't get in trouble. A subcontractor is an individual or company that contracts with business associated. That includes the same kind of services that are covered, whether it's documenting management, document disposal, transcription services, data processing. All those fall under HIPAA all the way downstream as well. Dead horse. But know this stuff, because even though it's dry and it's painful sometimes, it's important. It is. All right. Don't skim over this, especially when you get into like ethics and the scope of practice, ethical stuff. Do not skim over that. The privacy rule protects individually identified health information held or transmitted by a covered entity or its business associate in any form of media, whether electronic, paper, or oral. Hey, did you hear about Johnny? Yeah, I heard he lost his arm in a motorcycle accident. Bad news. Privacy rule calls this information protected health information. So if you're a private practice as a health coach and you want to determine whether or not you're subject to HIPAA, you can start with these 2 questions. Is the entity you are working with and for subject to HIPAA? Covered entity, business associate, subcontractor, whatever. And do you have a direct or incidental access to the personal health information of clients in relation to those entities? If you answer both yes, then you are subject to HIPAA. Okay. And there's the rest of it. All right. Some conflicts of interest. I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about some things that could get you in trouble as a coach if you have a conflict of interest. I will say that this is one of those areas that was asked on the board. Absolutely. So Know your stuff. Conflicts of interest is one that with careful advanced consideration can be avoided. It is important to be able to identify conflict of interest situations and take appropriate action as needed to disclose and or avoid conflict of interest. So what kind of situations could a coach get into and be a conflict of interest?
If I was a distributor or seller of essential oils, and part of my health coaching practice was recommending oils, and oh, by the way, I sell them, and I didn't disclose that up front, that is a conflict of interest.
Do you all agree with that or disagree with that? Thumbs up if you agree, thumbs down if you disagree. Good job, Patrick. Anybody else have one? Yep, thanks, Nicole. Appreciate that. Anybody else have another one, another example?
I'm thinking if you were to have a gym or you have ownership of a fitness center, and then during your coaching, you keep referring your client to go work out in your gym, and you didn't let anybody know that you have one, and you keep referring them to, oh, it's an amazing gym. You can lose 10 pounds in one day, you know, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Anything that you're going to get compensation for and didn't disclose it. And even then I still feel kind of shady about, hey, I'm selling this stuff on the side and disclosing it. It's still, to me feels like conflict. So promotion of products of services, essential oils, the gym, compensation from sale of the products. There's the essential oils. Hey, I'm making some money on the side selling this as another stream of revenue right here, 2-for-1 with this client. Use your rule for inappropriate gain. Hey, I'm going to refer you over to the nutritionist, and then you get a kickback from the dietitian, the nutritionist for that referral. Inappropriate. There it is, personal gain from referrals. So when you get into a situation, you want to take action. You want to disclose the conflict, whether is a conflict or it's potential or even perceived. You want to offer to remove and terminate the coaching relationship. And you want to be able to seek guidance from a mentor or governing body such as NIBWIC or ICF Ethics. Get a reading on that and figure out, hey, this is what's going on, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this. They can definitely guide you in that.
Are ICF coaches under the same purview as NBC, HWC?
I don't think so.
They
They're
have their
different.
own governing bodies. They have,
Yeah.
They aren't one of the ones that can bill for insurance, and I don't think they're covered under the health savings plans, things like that. So they are held to their own standard. Basically, they have their own credentialing body. They have 3 different credentials, and each credential is like layered with different stuff, and it's weird. That's the reason why they're not credentialed, is because they are not credentialed, why they're not a part of the reimbursement, is because they don't really have a set standard across the board. It's like, come to us and get more training through one of our programs, and then we'll give you another credential, right? Come get more training from us, and then we'll give you another credential. And, so that the standard is their accrediting body.
Okay.
Not to try to put them down. I'm not trying to put them down in any way, but they just kind of are doing their own thing.
Would you say it sounds like that NIBWIC is kind of the authority in this field right now?
I would say they stand out more than anybody else for sure. And I, for whatever reasons, good or bad, I feel like there should be more accrediting bodies, but it is what it is. They are the ones, and I think they position themselves very well because they partnered with the VA to do the research. So, you know, they were the ones kind of doing some of that preliminary work to where no other accrediting body was, and they weren't stepping in to help. They weren't doing that, so they got left out. Just a little bit of history on that side of why other ones weren't, but yeah, no, I would say this is the credential to have, and you will be able to build more revenue streams based on this one than any other credential you could have. Unless you're a professional, you know, go get a degree in something, but
Wow. All right. Real quick, Jenny's employed as a health coach at the gym. Gym recruits members for complimentary health coaching, though some may not be ready for a change. Among other metrics, Jenny's performance is based on her client's progress of her goals. Is there a conflict of interest? If so, what? What should Jenny do to remain within her professional ethical boundaries?
Can she disclose that she's a health coach?
She's a health coach. They're
Full disclosure.
full disclosure. I'm a health coach. I'm here. It is implied that Jenny's employment and compensation are partially based on whether or not her clients establish goals, which some may not be ready to make change, and whether or not they make progress towards achieving those goals. So therefore, Jenny has a vested interest in seeing that her clients establish goals, even though they may not be ready to do so, and for them to make progress. This puts Jenny in the driver's seat, and the client, you know, now they're the co-pilot. We're the pilot, they're the co-pilot, and that's not the way coaching works. So you want to be able to, Jenny should inform her supervisors of the conflict of interest situation and ask them to modify and or remove the performance metric. And one thing I do want to highlight here is another one of those code of ethics. In the NIBWIC, it talks about, as a coach, you clarify the roles of health and wellness coaching, you set boundaries and review with sponsors and stakeholders conflicts of interest that may emerge between coaching and other role functions. Disclose to all clients the exact nature of the coach's role within the company organization and the limitations and expectations thereof. Again, don't breeze through this code of ethics. You want to know their stuff. You want to study the codes, the ethics. In the interest of time, I'm going to, what do you think, Charlie? Let's see here. I've got six more slides. I'll talk fast. You listen fast, I talk fast. Y'all good with that? Okay. Actually, 5 slides because the last one is questions. There are a number of situations where coaches must assess if something is or has a potential impact coaching relationship and the value that his or her client receives from the coaching relationship. Coaches are human, and even with the best of intentions and skill for coaching, we bring our human traits to our coaching. Coaches can get hooked or especially interested in their client situation, particularly if they can relate to the client's situation, or the client situation can trigger emotional responses. Coaches use mindfulness and to notice the address these situations. It's important to have an awareness of the personal issues that may impact your coaching. There may be a misunderstanding, difference in expectations that can lead to discord or conflict. It is the responsibility of the coach to identify these situations and notice the impact of coaching relationships. Coaches can name and address these situations. Coaches may notice that the client is not making progress and may be disengaged, may be using the coaching sessions as a way to connect or vent. The duty of the coach is to name it, work with the client to determine if coaching is still a good fit and if the client is gaining any value from coaching. You know, let's take a step back and look and see what's going on here. Where are we? Coaches will need to decide how to proceed, may want to consult with the mentor coach, suspend or terminate the relationship, or refer them to another coach. I've had clients that go, I really feel more comfortable working with a woman coach. No problem. Let me get you connected. And I referred them over to a lady coach, and that client got what they needed. It would not have been a good working relationship because she was already standoffish because I'm a guy. I don't take offense to that. I respected that and got her connected. Let's see here. Final note on regulation. Which state laws apply to you and your business? Often the laws for the state within your client reside are applicable. This can be tricky if you're doing virtual or by telephone. So be aware of where they are and what laws apply. Anticipate more stringent regulation, which changes regularly, always something new coming out. Is the obligation of us, the professional, to understand the laws that regulate the profession. And also be mindful of jurisdiction and state which you practice, again, versus the state in which the client resides. Couple more here. I'm hurrying. In the NIBWIC Code of Ethics, it states that coaches must refrain from unlawful discrimination in occupation activities, including age, race, gender orientation, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, and/or disability, and consistently demonstrate dignity and respect for all professional relationships. Any other groups we think that might be needed to add to this?
Don't discriminate against people like Charlie. He can't help it.
Yeah, all the guys with beards. I can't coach them. You know, body type or where they live. You know, there's a lot of stuff, but you want to be mindful and check all your biases and stuff at the door, so that when you do meet with a client, you can continue to building that relationship and rapport with them. Let's see here. This is an example of cultural differences of which American healthcare providers may not be aware of. And a health coach can work in healthcare settings such as a hospital, doctor's office, or could also encounter the situation. Again, we must be careful not to make assumptions, keep our clients in the driver's seats, and remember to ask permission when providing information. All right. If you're in a situation and you're not sure they're Mexican and you don't know their culture, or Saudi Arabian and you don't know their culture, let them know. It's like, hey, if I say something that comes across offensive, I'm unaware, I'm learning. Please stop. Feel free to correct me and educate me on that. All right. Because everybody's culture is different. And, some people, you can look them in the eye and it's a strong relationship. Others, you look them in the eye and you have offended them. So, or you can't shake with one hand versus the other because it's offensive in their culture. So get to know them. When working with others who are different from us and or have different experiences, we take these actions to demonstrate sensitivity and increase the rapport and understanding and listening. Like I said, let the client know that you may not be familiar with it. Use active listening to pick up on the cues that you may be violating a cultural boundary or otherwise causing an unease. Ask questions, and again, you want to support them in their process, but you want to be aware of their cultural boundaries, knowing that we don't ask questions to satisfy our own curiosity unless the client volunteers the information. And again, if something is not, if they feel disrespected or they're not feeling heard or whatever, it's uneasy, let them know to check in with you and let you know. Okay. And then finally, coaches must make efforts to recognize their own biases, assumptions, and prejudices. We take care of our stereotypes. Lord, I'm trying to get done with y'all. Not in a bad way. I just know I'm trying to be respectful of your time. We must take steps to uncover our judgments and stereotypes, confront our inner biases, and acknowledge the benefits we receive by nature of birth circumstances and such. We must acknowledge, oop, I'm almost done. Almost done. I got one thing to say here. Must acknowledge that not everyone has the equal opportunity to attain his or her health potential and has equal access to conditions and resources that promise good health. All right. So everybody's different, people living in Memphis, and I only say Memphis because I've coached people there, may not feel comfortable to go out for a walk versus somebody in the Knoxville area, in the mountain area, they can feel like comfortable because of their surroundings. So just be aware of what's going on and yeah, check that. And one final thought is do know that coaching, the agreement with the client is not covered like patient, doctor, confidentiality, privilege, or client lawyer. Those are protected. Coaching is not. So just keep that in mind as well. And with that, I yield back to Charlie.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments about anything going on so far? Anything about the coaching, mentors, things like that? Feeling
I was
awkward about
thinking,
recording yourselves? Okay.
I was thinking that it's very important that you remain on your lane as a coach. You don't want to look cute and then you crisscross. Today you're a dietitian, tomorrow you're a holistic coach, next tomorrow you just keep changing. I mean, from what I can take from today's session, just remain on your lane and do it well.
That's a great way of putting it. I think that would sum up everything for the day. Stay in your lane. Don't veer off because it can just get sloppy once you start doing it, right? And then you start blurring those lines, and then next thing you know, you mess up and then get a cease and desist letter of stop practicing. And you don't want to get one of those. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, then let's go ahead and jump off here and then we'll see y'all next week. Next week, we're covering coaching theories and motivational interviewing. So be prepared for that. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
What do you say, Patrick? You cut out.
I said good night, Shade.
Oh,
Good morning.
I thought you called us something.
yeah.
No, Shade is immigrating to the United States. Will become a citizen pretty soon. She is going through this course to gain some proficiency, but also to be able to take back the skills to Nigeria. She wants to work for the business that I'm starting. Hopefully on Tuesday, I should have all the documents like ready to go.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really happy about it. She's good people.
She is good people. You can just tell she's a kind soul. You know what I mean? That's the big thing with her. Like you can just feel like she's just a warming, like compassionate person.
So is this something that you're doing that's above and beyond what good looks like?
It's different. Yeah. So my intent is to work. I want what good looks like to be the thing that pays my bills. And I would like to create something that eventually becomes a training academy, and partners with like vet tech or some other government program to help place people into companies and receive compensation that way.
Cool. Well, nice meeting you, Patrick.
Thank you. Good to be met.
That's right. We're going to help them get all that built up too. So
Yep.
we don't help.
Absolutely.
Let's
That's
make
awesome.
money.
That's right. That's right.
All right, y'all. Good night.
All right. Good
Have a
night.
good
Take
one.
care.
I guess I can stop recording now, huh?